We're going to decorate a 7.5 foot Christmas tree. The first thing we always do with a Christmas tree or any other greenery is, of course, check the lights. With this one, only the bottom half is working, so our job is to figure out why it's not working and get it working if it can work. In this case, it's probably that the lights have not been plugged in all the way down, which is the case. So I'm going to go ahead and get the lights working, and then we'll talk about fluff and greenery. So our lights are now working. The next thing we need to do is fluff our tree. In order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to take each of the branches and we're going to be twisting the greenery around to actually fill in the spaces. This greenery, you can't really push it back, push it forward, but you can twist it on the different branches as it comes out. And we want to do this to make sure that our tree looks very full. Make sure we twist it and fill in each of the gaps, starting from the top to the bottom. As we get down to the bottom, we will actually see that we can take the branches, and not only can we twist them, but we can actually separate them. So right down here, this branch could be in, now we want to separate it. If this branch has the ability, we see we have some gapping down here, I would want to take and twist my greenery down to start filling in the gapping on that. I might bend my branch up a little bit to start filling this in. So I have fluffed out my tree. I have taken the branches and I've twisted them around the actual branch itself, because I can put them in any direction I want them by twisting them around. I want it to look full. I don't want any gaps in my tree. The next thing that I'm going to do is put mesh on this tree. With the mesh, we will start right here at the base. I like to pick up the branch and I'm going to go in an upward pattern. As I do the mesh, I'm not putting it in very tightly. I'm just really setting it there, and I'm kind of creating a little bubble as I go through and do the mesh. If we set the mesh in too tightly, then the mesh gets lost once we start putting ornaments on the tree. So what I'm going to do is I've started down here, I'm working my way up. We're going to put 3 pieces of mesh on a 7.5 foot tree. What I'm going to do is where this mesh stopped here at the top, I'm going to drop down and I'm going to start down here at the bottom again. But I'm going to move over just a little bit so that I have enough mesh to go all the way around. So I will do the same thing of going in an upward direction, and where that mesh ended on the back side, just like that, I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. And as you can see, it's ended right here where we want that to begin, which is perfect. Now I'm going to take, and I'm going to start right where this mesh ended. I'm going to give it a little gap as though kind of your mesh is weaving in and out. And I'm going to start and place a piece of mesh starting right here and working my way up so that we have the same angle going as we started at the bottom. I'm not actually tying anything in. I'm going to place all of my mesh before I tie anything in case I come back and I decide I need to move it to a different spot. I'm going to do the same thing back here. I'm going to come and I'm going to see, okay, this is where my mesh ended. Let me go a foot, foot and a half, and I will start going up my tree. And I want to make sure that I'm kind of keeping equidistant from that right there. Make sure your bubbles are always to the outside and that the inside of the bubbles to the inside of the tree. And I will take another piece and go around here to the back, which you're not going to see at the moment. And then I'm going to take, and I have a piece of just 2 bubbles that I'm going to start from this edge right here and work my way up. To tie this in, what I'm going to do is on the ends, on the middles, let's start right here. I'm going to take this mesh and I'm going to push it all the way into the V of the tree where I have 2 pieces of greenery. And then I'm actually just going to twist them about 2 times. And that puts it in almost as low as, or as deep as we want it to be. Then I'm going to kind of fluff it out, make my bubble. As I come here, I can see there's a nice V right there. So I'm going to take my mesh and I'm going to put it into the V here and I'm going to twist it. So that's what I do with my 2 and 3 interior pieces, or bubbles. Now, for my end piece over here and my end piece down here, I'm going to take a zip tie and I'm going to take it, I'm going to tuck this back that direction. I don't want it coming out like this. I want to really tuck it in so it can't be seen. Then I'm going to take a zip tie. I'm going to run that zip tie right around here. But one of the things you have to do is, we have this zip tie right here. When you put the zip tie on the tree, you need to make sure you run the zip tie on this side of this previous zip tie. And the reason is we don't want it pulling and sliding out. If I put the zip tie on this side, it can pull right out, but we don't want that to happen. So we'll put the zip tie here. And while I know this is very hard to see in there, what I'm doing is I'm not attaching it to one of these outer branches. I'm actually going deeper in because I want this mesh to look like it's kind of running in and out of the tree anyway. Taking my zip tie and I'm going on the mesh on this side of the previous zip tie. And I'm tightening it down and I'm going to twist that down. Now if we pull this, it can't come out. What happens is when the trees get moved from one location to another, if we're not really good about how we zip tie it in, the guys might pull a piece of mesh, or the installers I should say, and then the mesh will come right off. So we now have our mesh in place. What we've done is we've put 3 pieces on the bottom, 3 pieces in the middle, and then 2 pieces on the top. We will go ahead and decorate with the finials, will be our next step. So whenever we're decorating a Christmas tree, we want to start with the most dramatic or obvious ornament first. And our finials are ornaments that are long. So the fatter, the longer it is, the more we want to start with that particular ornament. So I'll use this one first, and then another finial style, and then another one, and then move on from there. So what I'm going to do is I have 9 of these ornaments to decorate this 7.5 foot tree. So I'm going to put 3 in the bottom, 3 around the middle, and 3 around the top. This is a rather fat ornament, so I'm going to drop it kind of low. But what I typically like to do is I look at where my mesh is. So my mesh ends right here. The top of it is right here. The bottom of it is right down here. So I'm going to take this ornament where I have the largest gap here, and I am going to place it in. Now, when I put in my ornament, I am not putting it on the very edge of the branch usually. The fatter the ornament, the more it needs to go in. Pretty much when we're looking at our ornaments, is we want them to rest along the outside edge of the tree. We don't want them out this way, and we don't want them deep in, but so you're kind of got a flush feel along the outside of your tree like this. So I'm going to bring it down. I'm going to follow the same principle I do with everything else. We're going to wind clockwise. If you don't wind counterclockwise when you go to take the ornaments off, it is really hard. So we decorate with the idea of what is easiest to undecorate. So I'm going to come down here in my biggest area. I'm going to take a piece of greenery and I'm going to wrap 4 times around that piece of greenery. And I'm going to position my finial so it's hanging correctly. I'm going to take my next finial, and right here where the top of this silver is going up and the bottom of this silver is coming down will be exactly 1/3 of the way around the tree because we have 3 pieces of garland. So I'm going to do the same thing where I take a single piece and I'm going in mostly to the V in here, but I'm going to wrap around 4 times. Now for this final one, I'm going to come over here and we'll be more towards the back where this mesh has come up and I'm going to be putting this piece back here. So we have 3 along the bottom. Now we need 3 running around the middle. But what I want to do is make sure I'm evenly spaced. So I have those 2 right here. I'm going to come up halfway in between them to put this one on. Now, as I do that, I'm going to err towards the lower half of the tree. These are fat ornaments. If I do it up here, then when I go to put my next layer in, I'm not going to have space. So I'm going to stay more to the bottom half of halfway around than the top half. And I'm not going to put it over my mesh. My mesh is a really good space filler. If I'm putting my ornaments over my mesh, then what's the point in filling space? So I'm going to bring it in, tie it on. I'm going to move over here. I've got my 2 blue ornaments here. I'm going to come up about halfway, and I'm going to tie in this ornament. I can move my branches, I can move things to make it fit where I want it to fit. And I've done the same thing here, where I'm halfway in between these ornaments, and I'm putting this one on. Okay, so then we'll put our last layer on. You'll find that some of the packages have 9 ornaments, some have 8, and some have 10. The reason for the change is depending on the size of the ornament. We can't put as many of these on as we can a really thin finial. So that's where we're going to see some difference on this. So here we have our ones at the bottom. We've come up halfway and we're halfway in between. Now I'm looking at this center row. I need to come up approximately the same distance as I did down there. So I'm going to come up to about right here, and here's a nice area right here to put it in. So I have a blue ornament here and a blue ornament here. I'm going to go halfway in between up to my 3rd level. Now, the higher up I go on my tree, the more I'm going to have to work to get these big ornaments to set in here so that we don't end up with this fat ornament coming out to the side. A lot of times, especially with a new decorator, we'll have ornaments that just kind of look like they're sitting on the top up here. You really need to tuck your ornaments in. So I've got these 2 ornaments here. I'm going to come up to my next layer, halfway in between, and I'm going to tuck this in here. And then I would put my last one on the back. Now, we're going to go ahead and move to our next ornament. And this is a drop ornament. So it still has our length. It's a little bit different than this one here. And what I like to do is I'm trying to keep that even spacing going on. And what we have going on here is kind of this spiral coming up the tree. And we have a spiral here coming up the tree. So this is probably the most tricky ornament to put on this second one if it's a finial. I am actually going to come halfway between these 2 ornaments, kind of in that same spiral pattern, and I'm going to slide this one on. Now this ornament is a little smaller than the one that we just used, so it doesn't have to go quite as deep. It still needs to go deep, but not quite as deep. And I've got this pattern coming up to here. I have this one up here, so I'm going to come approximately halfway, and I'm going to put it on. I'm opting to go in between my 2 mesh, not on top of my mesh. So I've got 2 coming up here. I put the 3rd one right up here on the top. So I've done this line coming up like this. Now my next line, I'm going to start with this one, and I'm going to follow that same spiral pattern going to the top. So I'm halfway in between, right about here, and I'm going to tie it on. Now one of the other things to know when you're tying on an ornament is that you never leave green wire. You take that ornament and you tie, just like with garland or anything else, right next to the ornament. So let's see if I can get one here where you would see. We've got this line going right up here. So I am going to put this one about right here. This ornament could be more this way, but then it's a little close there. So we're kind of going in this fashion right here. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing this ornament right here, right next to the green piece. I'm not dropping it down. I'm bringing it right up, and I'm wrapping it around those 4 times. So we have our line coming up right here. We have a line coming up right here. And I'm going to do it on the back side here. so that we have we're decorated all the way around. So this is our next ornament. It is a cerise swirl finial. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it halfway in between my blue finials that are already here. Now, if I had wanted, I could have actually swapped this and used it here. It's not exact as to which ornament needs to go on first. It's just that I typically put the first one, so you've got 3 across the bottom, 3 in the middle, 3 on the top. I take the next finial and I go in a swirl pattern. I take my next one and I'm going to go halfway in between the 2 that are already there, and I'm going to put it on. Wrapping around 4 times. I want to tuck that in just a little further. I'm going to come over here and I'm halfway in between these 2 down here. And then my final one over here, I'm going halfway between my blue ones here. Now, I've done my bottom layer. I'm going to come up to the next layer. I'm going to go halfway between my blue ones here. And again, I'm trying to keep my ornaments so they're kind of roughly flush with the edges of the tree branches. I'll come over here, halfway between my blue ones here. And my final one back here, I'll be halfway between the blue ones. But I'm also creating kind of a diamond pattern, if you can see it. I'm going to jump up to my last layer. And as I go halfway between these blue ones, I am also creating a diamond with the fuchsia cerise colored ornaments. So those are our first 3 ornaments. Now the next set of ornaments will be round balls. And I like to try and say, all right, I have more cerise to go on. I want to put the cerise on next so I can keep it as far away from these cerises as possible, because I don't want to end up with cerise next to cerise or blue next to blue. So it gets a little complicated when you have a tree like this, but it's doable. Okay, so our next step will be to put on our cerise. It's the only color, well, we double up on purple and we double up on cerise. So I'm going to put in cerise next. It will be this ball so that I can make it as far away from the cerises that are already here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the cerises that are here, and I see I kind of have a diamond shape, and I'm going to stick this right in the middle. I'm going to put it back. I'm going to wind around 4 times. Now, to decide where I'm going to put my next cerise, I'm actually going to cheat and just look, where's this cerise in relationship to the next ornament? So it's just kind of up from this blue ornament. So I'm just going to place my cerises just up from my blue ornament. It's going to be, I usually pick some kind of point on the tree that will help me know where to put my next ornament. So I can see down here I've got my blue, and I'm going to come up just a little bit from it, and amazingly it puts it in perfect position so that it's equidistant away from my other cerises. I'm going to take my next one and I'm going to see, okay, here's a blue ornament here. I can't stick it right here, so I'm just going to have to move over a little bit. It doesn't have to be exact. It doesn't have to be precise. It just has to be close. And you're also looking to say, well, what works best? I have another one. I have my blue here, and I'm going to put this one up here. And I'm going to put it in deep as I can, because I really don't want that poking way far out. I'm not going to do the back side because you can't see it anyway. So I'm going to switch to my purples, and I'm going to decide, okay, where do I want my purples? I'm going to pick a position that is empty, which this is looking my most empty at the moment, and I'm going to use this as my reference point. So every purple I put on that looks like this, I'm going to put just down from this ornament. So I'm going to go in, wrap around, and that ornament is now on. Now I'm going to take this one and I'm going to look and say, okay, I went just down from this ornament. So this one, I'm going to go just down from that ornament. And I'm gonna look at this one, and I'm gonna go just down from this ornament, just exactly like I've done there. One thing to note, because these trees are being moved all over the place, if we hang our ornaments low, before they come back, they're gonna be dragging on the ground, they're gonna be broken. Never hang your ornaments below about here. So the bottom of your ornaments are running along your tree about this location. If you go lower, you're gonna end up just having to replace it every single year. So this one, while ideally it would go down here, I'm gonna have to move it up just a little bit. To make it work. So I'll put in one more on this front side. Like I said, I'm not going to keep going to the back because you can't see it anyway. I have this one here, so I'm going to come down in this position. And you will notice by using this as a reference point, because this was already evenly distributed, now my purples are all very evenly distributed. Now for my next color, I'm actually going to select the other purple because I want to get as far away from these purples as possible. If I wait and I add the two purples at the end, then I won't end up with space that's farther away. So I'm going to grab my next purples. So I put in my two cerises, I put in my purple, I'm going to now put in my second purple. I want to go as far away from the purples that are already there. So I'm going to pick a point right here in the middle because I've got these kind of going in a diamond pattern here. So I notice that it is just to the top of this one here. So I'm going to again use this one as my reference point, but instead of going to the right, I'm actually going to go to the left of it. Because I don't like to have to think about what I'm doing when I'm doing the tree. I just want to be able to put it in as easily as I can. That one I didn't get up as close as I should have been. So I'm going to come down here, just up from my blue, and I am going to put my purple. You can see it's making it very evenly spaced there. Okay, I'm going to come just up from my blue here and put in a purple. Actually, come down just a little bit. You can't see it as well. Okay, I've got a blue one there. I've got one there. I have one down here that I'm going to come up and I'm going to put my purple on. I could go around to the back, but since you can't see the back, I'm not going to do that right now. So now I'm going to pick my next color. My next color is green on this tree. To decide where I'm going to put it, I'm going to look at my tree and I'm going to decide where's the next biggest space that's available. And I'm going to actually just choose right here, right below this one. So once again, I am going to use the balls that are already in place to help me decide where this is going to go. So I'm putting this one right below this pink one. And that's going to put the next one right up here. And because these are already evenly spaced, it's going to create nice spacing on my ornaments. So I have this one down here, and I'm going to add one more in over here for you to be able to see what I have going on. And it will be just down from the ornament you cannot see over here. And you can see my green is spaced out here. Apparently, I forgot to hit record, so I'm just going to tell you what I did on these last ornaments. So what I had put in were my silver ornaments, and I put in my teal ornaments, and I put in my clusters. To put these in, what I have done is I have looked at my tree and said, where do I need ornaments? And just found vacant holes. So when I'm putting them on, I'm always looking at kind of going in a zigzag pattern. And I also look at, I only have 8 of these, so how far do I want to spread them apart? So we have a hole here, so I put in my silver, and then I looked and I put in a silver up here. Now I'm coming around to this side of the tree, and I put in a silver here, and I put in a silver here, and I'm actually gonna move this one because I really only have 8 silvers to go, so I'm gonna move this one over here a little bit. So those are my silvers. I've put those in. Now I have my teal right here. And I did the exact same thing as I did with the silver. I looked at my tree and I said, where is there a spot that could be filled? And I'm also looking at kind of an angle. So here is a spot, and here is a spot, here is a spot, and then moving on around. Then, and I decorate around the tree with that same idea in mind. I have my clusters. I have 2 different types of clusters. I have this cluster here that is with a cerise. I have this cluster here that's the main ball is a lime green. Again, I look and I say, I've got 8 of my cerise clusters. Where am I going to put them? I have 4 sides to my tree, which means I'm going to do 2 on each side. So I want 2 on this side, 2 on this side, 2 in the back, and 2 to that side. I'll do the same thing with my lime green. I'm just trying to fill in the holes at this point. So I look up here and I go, oh, this is a good hole. Down here, there's a hole that needs to be filled. With my lime green, I did the same thing. And I'm trying to get them on kind of opposite ends so I don't end up with 2 exactly together. Now finally, I'm going to do my snowflakes. Most of the time, I like to do my snowflakes much earlier, as about the 3rd ornament, but I forgot. And that happens where you go, oh dear, I forgot an ornament, I gotta put it on. I'm still gonna follow the pattern, and if it had to be the last ornament to be forgotten, well, snowflake is a good one. Because it can kind of go on the outer edge. So I'm gonna step back, and I'm gonna take a look. I got 10 of them. Where am I gonna put them? That's gonna be, I've got 4 sides, which is gonna give me 2 to 3 per side. And I'm actually gonna count these. 6, 7, yes, 10 of them. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to look and say, where could I use a snowflake? Well, this is a nice empty spot. I'm going to put it here. Now, when we're putting our snowflakes on, you're going to want to do something to make sure it actually stays flush. We don't want our snowflake going like this, or it totally loses the effect of a snowflake. So I'm bringing another branch through it to kind of hopefully help hold it in place. So I've got this one here. I know my next one is going to come down here somewhere, and I know I'm going to put one up here somewhere. So this is looking like a great spot. I'm going to put it on, and you see how it's twisting? I'm going to turn. This time I'm actually going to take a branch, and I'm going to push it through. That's pretty tight in there to keep it so that it's not going to turn. So I've got one here. I've got one here. I'm going to look in terms of something down in this area. And as I look, I have a pretty good gap right here. And so I think that's what I'm going to do. I could have gone down here, but this is my biggest gap where people are going to see. I'm going to take my branch and go through a snowflake and really try and make it so that it's not going to turn. Okay, so I'm looking here. I want to go somewhere in this area. And I think I'm actually going to start shifting around and come over here to this side right here. And I'm going to want one somewhere near the top up here. So I'll put one in right up here. And we'll put a final one in here for the camera. I've got one up here, one here. I'm going to look right about here. I'm going to show you how to do a topper for a tree. We like to do two-tone toppers if we can, half of one color, half of another. So the first thing I'm going to do is spread out my spray. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to put it in so it goes down deeply right along the base of that tree. We don't want the topper looking like it's falling out. I like to do all of one color before I switch to the other color. So I'm going to do 4 of them. Okay, and I've set those in fairly deeply. Now I'm gonna bring in my next color. I've spread it out, and I'm gonna kind of alternate the locations as to where the silver is. And I'm making sure that the stalk of the topper is right next to that pole in the tree. One of the biggest mistakes is having the topper look like it's kind of hair on the top. We want it to fill up the whole top, and then we can have some sticking out of the top. So I'm going to put approximately 4 of these in. I want to make sure I get some good height right on the top. Okay, I'm going to add a few more because I really feel like we need just a few more. I'm going to be alternating my green with my silver. With this tree. Now when I'm done, I'm going to step down and take a look, adjust anything that feels like it needs adjusting. And there might be some things where I look at it from the bottom and I go, whoa, that didn't work. Okay, I'm going to step down, take a look at it, see where we're at. Okay, I feel pretty good about things. I feel like we could use just a little more silver right here in the front to mix in with this green, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so now we have our topper. It's filled in from the bottom. It's not just floating on top. The next thing we need to do is make sure that we tie in the topper. So I'm going to take these zip ties, and I'm going to try with 2 first. I'm going to zip tie them together, such. And then I'm going to come in down here. And usually it is easier to do this before I've decorated the tree. I'll put in the mesh, then I'll put in the topper, and then I'll decorate the tree. So that would be the ideal. But what I'm doing is I'm just going around the tree with the zip tie and then zip tying it in place. There we go. And when I do that, then these sticks and picks will not go anywhere when the guys are moving the trees around. And that's all there is to a topper.